So I've got my home desktop computer, I've got a work desktop computer, and I have a Pinebook Pro, and I have an SSD that I'll boot on certain machines sometimes, and they're all basically clones of the same system. And so let's say I need to change a config file or change a setting in one machine or a one install, then that means I need to change that 4 times because I want to keep my workflow consistent. And so my solution to not have to do this is to just store my config files in Nextcloud. Then, so for example, let's take bashrc, my bashrc file. On an initial setup, I just move this to my Nextcloud folder, and then I'll do a symbolic link to my home folder to the format that's expected by the system. So I just do that with all of my config files that I change regularly or change often, and so that way, if I change a setting at home and I go into work, it'll just sync automatically. Now, sometimes, for example, with Awesome Window Manager, that's not shown here because this is just my home directory. But with my rc.lua, for example, after that syncs, I need to reload it. And there are other little quirks, like I sync my bin folder with all of my scripts. And so that by default, let's see, I run this, let's see, layout. I run this as a login item, and it waits for Nextcloud to sync, and then it sets everything as executable, because by default Nextcloud is going to pull it in at read write, read read. So I'll run that to make sure everything's still executable, or that runs at login to make sure everything's executable in my bin. And you also have to be careful with this. I run Debian stable on pretty much everything, but on my Pinebook Pro I have Manjaro. Now I got into trouble with one thing because in Awesome I set it to use a font that was not actually installed in Manjaro, and it caused an issue. That's why you always want to have a backup, and obviously you do that by putting it in Nextcloud. And you've got versioning. You can go back versions in Nextcloud and that sort of thing. That's a pretty common feature. And by the way, this will work. This should work with any cloud provider thing. Just put the file in that folder and then symlink it back to your home directory. So it's a really nice thing to have, and I haven't heard of too many people talking about this. So with bash history, I tried to sync that for a little while, between just have one bash history file, and that didn't work because I ended up with conflicted copies, because I'd be typing commands and it would be adding to that before it actually synced. And so yeah, just make sure you have a backup, and just move, make a backup copy of the original config file, and then do a symlink it back to your home directory or to wherever the system is expecting that config file to be. And if you're wondering, how do I do a symlink? What happened to this here? That's weird. Okay. Well, let's type it out again. So for example, bashrc. So I've already got mine set up, of course. So, you type the expected file name. So this is a symbolic link. Look up all this stuff. Do man ln, and this is for soft link. I'm not going to get into symbolic links, but this is the file itself, and this is the symlink file. So this is really handy for me, and so I thought I would share it. So a quick follow-up. I was giving examples with, for example, bashrc, and I say, oh, and I symlink it to my Nextcloud directory. Well, you may have been wondering, there is no Nextcloud here in the path. That is because, well, here's a Nextcloud in the path. That is because this directory is symlinked. So you see this directory is symlinked there. So that's why I symlinked it to a symlink. So that's why it's not actually in the path there, because this one is already symlinked. But I didn't want that to confuse anyone.